Hi, good morning. Can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. So we're going to, thanks everyone for having us here. We're absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to chat about SantéMPI and the work we've been doing around it. So just give a quick, I've got more slides probably than the 15 minutes allows. So cut me off or let me know 1 minute or so before, because I want to make sure I want to get through them, and I apologize in advance for going quickly. So first, some background and context. SantéSuite Inc. is actually a company with very deep roots and extensive experience. We incorporated at the beginning of 1999. We're established as a social benefits corporation, and we're in the process of obtaining and applying for B Corp certification. Our experience spans digital health research, development, and implementation. Most of you, probably a lot of you know Dwayne Bender, Justin Fife, myself, and you've gotten to know Madeline more recently. We're the key founders of the team. Justin in particular has been, and Dwayne were involved in helping author some of the standards that we're all familiar with like HL7, that should be HL7 and FHIR, the IHE, PICS, and PDQ standards. We're also the members of the leadership team that developed MEDIC-CR. We've been involved in a number of national scale implementations, the Tanzania's EIR immunization registry implementation. Madeline and I worked closely with Jordan in guiding its implementation of its national electronic health records. And more recently, and relevant to this presentation, we've been working with Myanmar to implement the master patient or master person index and client registry, amongst other things. SantéMPI is, you may already know, originated or is built on, originated from MEDIC-CR, and MEDIC-CR was originally developed through an NSERC, a National Research Council grant, to support the Canadian National Digital Health Program. SantéMPI is the next generation of that client registry. It's fully functional, open source, and standards compliant. And it's designed to support the longitudinal management of patient data across health systems. And we're proud and delighted to have been selected for funding by Digital Square as a global good. So at a very high level, our mantra, our philosophy is to help use the Master Person Index and Unique ID to help shift health systems to person-focused health systems, digital health systems, rather than indicator or data collector focused systems. This diagram gives a quick kind of picture of it. We believe that if you collect data at the point of care the right way, you can automatically generate all the indicator data that you need. And a lot of systems have been designed around indicators and data collection rather than person-centered care. And we believe person-centered care is essential to achieving UHC and many of the goals that are coming out of WHO and so forth. SantéMPI is actually, moving on to kind of its infrastructure and how it's built. It's part of the SantéSuite core group of products, and underneath it all is SantéDB, which provides some basic infrastructure and features which I'll get to in a moment for all our products, which include SantéMPI, the Master Person Index that we're going to talk about today, and SantéIMS, which is our immunization management system, EIR. So the SantéDB infrastructure provides kind of an operating system for developing and implementing digital health solutions. And so SantéMPI itself benefits from this foundation and plumbing, which includes a shared clinical data repository. It provides master data services, basic interoperability services, authentication, clinical decision support, and uniquely offline first or offline online capability to do data synchronization and so forth. And this next slide gives you a little bit more detail on that. So we support HL7 v2, HL7 Fire R3. We're actually in the process of implementing R4 through the Digital Square grant. I think we've actually got prototype of that working now. And those are some of the other standards. We run across multiple platforms, Windows, Linux, etc. And as I noted, we can run both in connected and disconnected mode. We have a disconnected component which allows you to use the MPI in a disconnected fashion, and that's something we actually learned. That innovation came out of our work with Myanmar. This slide just repeats a lot of what we just said, but gives you a visual of some of those integrations and standards that we're supporting. And we'll leave that for at that point. Some of the basic features of a master person index that SantéMPI provides are blocking. In other words, being able to filter out. So when you've got a massive number of individuals that you're trying to match across multiple systems, the first thing you want to do is kind of reduce the number that you have to work with, and that's what the blocking does. Scoring then gives weights to candidates that you're comparing to then look at and analyze and determine how close they are to each other and whether they represent the same individual or not. And then the classification process allows you to go through that, the due diligence that's necessary to merge records and so forth. So just moving on to how do we integrate with OpenHIE and talk about some of the use cases that we've been involved in. So the master person index is a key component in helping achieve the interoperability that OpenHIE as an architecture can provide to digital health systems. So as we noted, it allows you to establish data sharing across multiple systems. It also is being used, and I'll talk about it in the next slides, to help implement national unique health IDs, and has a number of other capabilities because of its infrastructure being based on the SantéDB platform. So you can use SantéMPI to help establish data sharing across multiple applications and systems. And we'll go into some examples now from our work in Myanmar. So just a quick bit of background. We've been involved with Myanmar since 2016, initially focused on piloting and implementing the master person index to support integration of 120 plus instances of OpenMRS HIV/TB sites. So that was the initial focus. The goal was to implement SantéMPI as the national master person index. And the strategy was to focus initially on these use cases for OpenMRS and learn from that and then adapt the technology as we were learning through field implementations and so forth. So we pretty well completed the pilot process at the end of, geez, with the pandemic, my brains, my time zones have shifted, but it basically at the end of last year. And in that process, over those the last couple of years, I guess, the MOH of Myanmar recognized that they could actually leverage SantéMPI, not just to provide data sharing and facilitate interoperability, but also implement a national unique health ID. And furthermore, what happened with the pandemic over last year is we realized, or MOH realized, especially towards the end of the year, as we were approaching the first wave of vaccine delivery, that they could use SantéMPI to support the COVAX pre-registration process, which would then support national immunization planning, and leverage that context to actually implement and register the entire population with national health IDs. And as a third kind of element, as a first step to full EIR implementation, the Ministry of Health had decided to also adopt SantéIMS as an offshoot of the National Information Architecture Roadmap, which is based on OpenHIE. So the way they could leverage SantéMPI as the first step was to help generate the actual vaccination cards to support the initial vaccine deployment. And I'll give you some quick screenshots of that. So just very quickly, here's what the work looked like with integration of OpenMRS. I'm not sure if I'm going to show you actual slides from the Myanmar instance. I may or may not, but the implementation supported both direct registration in OpenMRS and then review using the SantéMPI portal. And you could do this both online and offline. As I mentioned, we have a component called the Disconnected Gateway, which directly integrates with any application, in this case, OpenMRS, to provide that functionality. You can search the MPI directly in OpenMRS. And import as a local patient. You can edit and add additional information. All that goes back into the MPI and can be viewed in the MPI portal. You can then use the MPI portal to adjudicate and look at the records that you're trying to compare and verify and create a record of truth. We also, along the way, MOH asked us, can we do birth and death registrations with the system? And again, because of its its infrastructure, we were able to easily add that functionality. So here's a screenshot of the birth registration. And we also did death registration. And lastly, here's how we were able to support the implementation of the vaccination card. So that QR code you see there is the National Unique Health ID. There was also a secondary simplified QR code that was provided that just provided the unique ID and nothing else.